The snow fell in silent sheets that Christmas Eve, blanketing the world outside in white, while inside her small apartment, Margaret sat in near darkness. The lights on the tree, a tree she had almost forced herself to put up, flickered dimly. The ornaments were mismatched, some old and cracked, others hand-painted decades ago by small hands that no longer came home for the holidays. The room felt vast and empty, and every tick of the clock on the wall echoed with a sharp reminder: she was utterly alone. The kind of alone that pierces deeper than silence, the kind of loneliness that feels like it's pressing in from every corner of the room. Margaret had never dreaded Christmas before. Once, long ago, it had been the season she cherished most. Her house used to be full of warmth, laughter, wrapping paper scattered across the floor, and the smell of her famous gingerbread baking in the oven. But time has a cruel way of shifting everything. Her husband had passed 5 years earlier after a battle with illness. Her daughter lived thousands of miles away, chasing her own life and family in another city, and phone calls had grown shorter and rarer. The friends she once celebrated with had either moved away or slowly drifted apart. Now Christmas, the day once overflowing with joy, had become the loneliest reminder of everything she had lost. Before we go further into this story, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small actions to change lives, please don't forget to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to I Am Kindness Corner. It truly helps spread love and warmth in a world that needs it. Margaret tried to busy herself that evening, telling herself that if she just kept moving, she wouldn't feel the weight of the silence. She made tea, but it went cold before she touched it. She turned on the TV, but the sounds of cheerful Christmas specials felt like an insult to her reality. She even considered going for a walk, but the snow outside was heavy, and she didn't have the strength. Instead, she sat by the window, looking out at the rows of houses glowing with lights, shadows of families moving inside, people hugging, children laughing, parents carrying gifts. It was like watching a world she no longer belonged to. Her chest ached, not in the way of sickness, but in the way of an empty heart. She whispered to herself, "I don't think anyone would notice if I just disappeared. Not tonight, not tomorrow." The thought frightened her as much as it comforted her. Tears welled in her eyes, but she quickly brushed them away. She had grown used to hiding them, even from herself. Hours passed slowly. The streets outside had quieted, and midnight approached. She sat back in her armchair, the dim tree lights blinking tiredly. Just when she thought the night would end with nothing but her sorrow, a sound jolted her. A sharp, unexpected knock at the door. At first, she froze. No one ever knocked on her door anymore, especially not on Christmas Eve. She hesitated, her mind racing with possibilities. Was it a mistake? The wrong apartment? A delivery left at the wrong place? But the knock came again, firmer, insistent, yet not harsh. She stood slowly, her knees stiff from sitting too long, and shuffled to the door. When she opened it, she found her neighbor, Daniel, standing there. He was in his early 30s, with kind eyes and a slightly nervous smile. Snow clung to his coat and hair, and in his hands, he held a tray covered with foil. The warm steam rose into the cold night air. "Hi, Margaret," he said softly. "I know it's late, but I thought maybe you could use some company tonight. My family made too much food, and I didn't want you to be alone." For a moment, she couldn't speak. Her throat tightened, and her hand trembled on the doorframe. No one had spoken to her with such simple kindness in what felt like forever. She wanted to say no, to retreat back into her solitude where it was safer, but her heart betrayed her. She nodded silently and stepped aside. Daniel entered with a warmth that seemed to fill the room instantly. He set the tray on her table and began uncovering it. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, fresh bread, and even slices of pie, all steaming and fragrant. Margaret felt tears rise again, but this time they weren't from sorrow. The sight of home-cooked food, offered without pity but with genuine care, was overwhelming. They sat together at her small table, plates filled with more food than she had eaten in weeks. Daniel talked gently, sharing stories about his family's traditions, about how his young daughter insisted on singing carols until her voice gave out, and how his wife burned the first batch of cookies every single year but laughed about it every time. Margaret listened, her heart stirring at the sound of laughter in her home again, even if it wasn't hers. Slowly, she began to share too. She told him about her late husband, about the gingerbread recipe she hadn't baked since he passed, and about her daughter who used to spend Christmas Eve begging to open just one gift before morning. Her voice shook at times, but Daniel listened with a quiet respect that made her feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in years. The clock ticked on, but the night no longer felt heavy. The emptiness in the apartment seemed to fade, replaced by warmth and human presence. Margaret realized something profound: loneliness didn't vanish with grand gestures or miracles, but with the simplest act of someone knocking on your door, reminding you that you still mattered. As midnight turned into morning, Daniel stood to leave. He promised to stop by the next day to bring her more leftovers, and his smile was so genuine that Margaret believed him. She walked him to the door, and as he left, he said, "Merry Christmas, Margaret. You're not alone. Not anymore." When she closed the door, she leaned against it and let herself cry, but these tears were different. They weren't filled with despair, they were filled with gratitude. That knock on her door had been more than a neighborly gesture. It had been a lifeline, a reminder that kindness still existed, that she still belonged in this world. The next morning, sunlight poured through her window, glistening against the snow outside. For the first time in years, Margaret woke up on Christmas Day with a heart that felt lighter. She decided to bake again, pulling out her old gingerbread recipe. The smell filled her apartment, and when Daniel and his family knocked later that afternoon, she was ready, with a plate of cookies and a smile that reached her eyes. What had begun as the loneliest Christmas of her life had transformed into something unforgettable. Not because of presents or grand celebrations, but because of one small act of kindness, a neighbor knocking on her door. That moment reminded her that even in the darkest winters, a spark of human connection could reignite warmth in a weary heart. If this story touched your heart today, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with others, and subscribe to I Am Kindness Corner. Every interaction helps spread stories of love and kindness to those who may need them most. And before we end, I have one special request: please comment below what kindness means to you. Your words might inspire someone else who feels alone tonight. Because sometimes, the smallest gestures, like a knock on the door, can change someone's world forever.